Hello, Paul. So I am Gilles from the YouTube channel Matière à Profit. Thanks for accepting our invitation. So first, can you tell us more about yourself and your company, Collective Mining?
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to tell your audience about Collective Mining. So I am the CFO of Collective Mining and one of the co-founders. And previous to that, I was the CFO for Continental Gold. That over a period of a decade discovered over 11 million ounces of high-grade gold in Colombia, permitted the project, raised financing, built it, and commissioned it to about 80%, and ultimately sold it to Zijin Mining for $2 billion in enterprise value, and the transaction closed in March of 2020. That timing is everything in life. That happened 1 week before North American COVID lockdowns. Yeah. So myself and Ari Sussman, our executive chairman, both found ourselves out of work, bored pretty quickly. So we got back to work and we formed Collective Mining.
So it was formed in 2021?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And it was on the stock market right after, right?
We held it privately for about a year. We had to consolidate the ground. So we operate in a department called Caldas in Colombia. And Caldas is basically the coffee growing epicenter of Colombia, but it also has a rich mining history. And we are contiguous to Aris Mining. Aris Mining is on the TSX and on the New York Stock Exchange. They have an asset called Marmato that they're currently developing in construction. But Marmato has been operating continuously on a small scale for over 500 years. And despite that mining history in the region, we were able to consolidate the ground around them, which is really remarkable. And I'm not sure exactly why no one else did it, but we were able to do it during COVID, and obviously we're happy about that.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that in a second, but if you look at the stock for Collective Mining for the past months and even years, it's been going not so bad, actually, and the same cannot be said about other mining stocks. What's your take on this situation? How do you explain that?
Yeah, so even in a bad market, and it's been challenging, it's been, I think we're at the very beginning of a bull market for precious metals, and it hasn't really trickled down yet into the junior market, but even despite all of that, the market still rewards companies for discoveries. And we've made a major discovery that I think is going to turn out to be one of the best. In recent history. We've still got lots of drilling to do, but I think despite you saying that we've had a decent run, I still feel like it's been a challenge. It's been an uphill battle, but compared to some of our other peer group that haven't made discoveries, we don't have much to complain about.
It's been a challenge for everybody. Well, in the mining industry at least. Well, you have two main projects in Guayabales. Yep. Can you tell more about those two projects?
Sure. So we have two projects in Guayabales. One's called San Antonio, okay, and one's called the Guayabales project. So we have the Guayabales project.
Guayabales.
Okay, so there's two, and then we have another project called San Antonio.
Okay.
San Antonio is a much earlier stage project. I don't think we'll spend time talking about that today. We have about 3,000 or 4,000 meters into it. That was the first project we worked because Guayabales wasn't ready yet. We had to actually permit it. We had to actually license it before we could start working it. But the Guayabales project is a spectacular project. It's infrastructure rich, and we've made a major discovery called Apollo. And Apollo is what we call a brecciated porphyry, which is overprinted by multiple sets of porphyry-related veins, and that's what gives it its high grade. Okay, it comes right to surface. And it's kind of think of an upside down cone where it gets wider at depth and it's wide open. Okay, the only place that we know where it's closed off is in the very southeast corner. Everywhere else it's wide open. It's getting big. It's multi-million ounces and growing, and we're super excited about it.
Can you tell us how that discovery will potentially affect the future revenues of collective mining if it's found out to be like you expect?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, there's been a recent development, which is the discovery of what we call the ramp zone.
There's a ramp zone.
Yeah. But so we should look at Apollo as basically two deposits. We have the upper Apollo portion, right, which we have drilled out. We've got roughly 50,000 meters into it to date. And then we got this new ramp zone that's about 1,000 kilometers below the surface. Now, why the ramp zone is relevant for the Guayabalas project is because despite it being 1,000 kilometers below the surface, it is at the same elevation as a proposed access ramp. And you can see behind me, there's a long section of the Guayabalas project that shows the Apollo system. It also shows the trap system, which we'll get to in a minute. But you can see the gray area, which if I draw a circle around that gray area, that is multi-million ounces in itself, okay, and growing. But in a ramp zone, which is the two red dots behind us, where we've hit 57 meters at over 8 grams per ton gold equivalent and 15 meters at over 20 grams per ton gold equivalent, this was a surprise to us, okay? And it's potentially a game changer for the company because not only the grades speak for themselves, but because it's at the same elevation as the proposed ramp, this would be something that would come out early in a potential mining scenario.
I'm not sure I understood clearly. Will you be doing open pit for this zone, or will you be doing underground mining?
So it's a combination of both. So we envision there'd be a small open pit at the top of Apollo, but small, like call it 2 years of production, something like that, okay? And the reason for that is because it's in a bowl, and if we go too big, the stripping ratio will be too high. Okay, so but the best grades, some of the best grades that we see in the Apollo deposit are right at surface. Okay, and if you go through our presentation, you can see some of those intercepts. So a small open pit to start, and then going underground from 2 levels, right? From the proposed ramp area and at the top. Okay, to get the production up.
Can you give us an estimate of the cost needed to sustain the operations?
Okay, so we don't have that yet. We don't have a technical study out, so I'd be totally guessing. Yeah. Okay, but I could tell you that we built the Buritica mine in Colombia that sold to Zijin in March of 2020. We built that. That was a 3,000 ton per day mine, and we built that back in 2018 to 2020, and it was roughly 550 million American. Okay. This is going to be the throughput on this mine will be larger because it's a different type of geology. It's still high grade, but the throughput, it's more of a bulk tonnage type of deposit. So I don't know what the throughput would be, but it's going to be definitely larger than 3. I won't even take a guess, but it's going to be bigger. So the capex is going to be big. However, I could sit here today and confidently tell you that it'll be in the lowest quartile of capex costs, primarily because we are infrastructure rich. Okay, if you look at the slide, there's a slide in our presentation that shows the 2 projects, and it shows that the Pan American Highway goes literally north-south, right between our 2 projects. And right along the Pan American Highway is the Cauca River, which is Colombia's largest river. And right along the river is high voltage power. Okay, and we're 30 or 35 minutes away from a town that has a population of roughly 35,000 people, so there's abundant labor.
So you're in an infrastructure-rich place.
Yep, and that always equates to lower capex. If you look at some around the industry, there's been some wonderful discoveries, both base metal and precious metals, right? But they are very remote, okay? And I'm not saying they're phenomenal deposits, but to develop a camp there, when you have to build 40 kilometers or 50 kilometer road to get into the site, right? And then you got to house people 24/7. You got to feed them and house them, increasing costs and everything. In this scenario, we will have people show up for work. We'll feed them lunch, and they'll go home to dinner and have dinner with their family.
Place. Okay,
that's right.
Yes. If the discovery is so big as you say it might be, will you attempt to exploit it yourself, or will you try to resell it to a bigger player?
So the short answer to that is we want to sell it.
How you want to sell it?
Okay, so we've built the mine before, as I described. We built it on time and we built it on budget. It's a tough slug. Okay, and that is really not my expertise, and quite frankly, not Ari's expertise either. Okay, we are explorers at heart.
Yeah.
And there's one significant difference between today and what it was back in 2017 when we decided to build the Buritica mine. And that's the cost of capital. The cost of capital is too high now, in our view, for a single asset producer to take on such an endeavor.
Okay.
It's, you know, one mistake with a leveraged balance sheet at today's rate, and you're done.
Yeah.
Right? And the equity holders get crushed.
Okay, I got it. So collective mining will focus on being an explorer company. Okay. So in your website, because I've been to your website, you emphasize ownership of the capital by managers themselves.
Yep.
And you say that there is about 30% which is owned collectively by the founders.
Yep.
So do you confirm that all the managers, including maybe yourself, have skin in the game?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, management and insiders own 37% of the company.
Yes.
Ari Sussman, our executive chairman, and myself have participated in every equity financing since its inception.
Including the last one?
Yes, including the last one, with the exception of the one we did in March of 2024, where we brought in our strategic investor, which was kind of, because it wasn't available to everybody else, it was just one investor came in and was a big company. And of note of that, I am now at liberty to talk about who our strategic investor is. There was a confidentiality clause when we first entered into it, but because we're listed on the New York Stock Exchange, they needed to self-disclose their ownership because it's over 5%, and so the strategic investor is Agnico Eagle. Okay, so they currently own about 7% of the company, and they own warrants. If you look at our capital structure, that we have 2.2 million warrants outstanding.
So they can raise a stake in the company?
Up to 9.9%.
Okay. So that was my next question, because in late October you announced that there has been a $25 million financing for the new project. So my question was going to be, can you tell us who the main backers are?
Sure. So the financing where Agnico Eagle came in, that was in March of 2024. Okay, and they got pro rata rights.
Yes.
So the financing that you're referring to was just completed a couple weeks ago. We raised 46 million Canadian dollars, and Agnico Eagle participated on their pro rata, and they topped up slightly to get to 9.9%. Okay, we brought in. It was an interesting book. It was 2.5 times oversubscribed. We got in some North American precious metal funds. Okay, that have been hurting with redemptions for the last couple of years, and when we've been talking about them, they like the story, but they could never come in. They just didn't have enough capital. They would have to sell something to buy something, and they weren't willing to do that. But we did finally land them. There was 2 or 3 of them there, a couple from the U.S. and a couple from Canada. So that was nice to see. We also had a huge demand on the retail side, which was also nice to see. So it was a successful financing, and over the years, over the 15 years that I've been raising capital in the mining industry, the last, with the exception of the last one, the last few have been very challenging. Okay, Ari Sussman has been responsible for raising over $1 billion in capital over his career.
It reflects a lack of interest in the mining sector.
That's right, and we struggled to get it done, but we got them all. We always got them done, but it was not a walk in the park. But this one was well received, which was very nice to see, and it traded. You could see how it traded after the deal closed. Yeah.
And now let's talk about the country where your company is operating. You're based in Colombia. 100% of your projects are in Colombia, right?
Yeah.
Is Colombia a business-friendly country when it comes to mining, and is it safe in terms of, getting the money out of the country or such things? Okay.
All right. So Colombia is a misunderstood jurisdiction. Okay. I've been there for 15 years. Ari's pushing 20 years. Okay. We've been doing business there a long time. There's ups and downs, of course, like any other jurisdiction. Yes. But Colombia has, the political system is identical to the United States. Okay, you got the House, Senate, and you got the president, with one exception. They have a one term and done. So the president is allowed to have one term, and then they're not allowed to run again. Okay, in the United States, it's 2, I believe.
Yes, we've seen that.
So they have a political system that's separate from the judicial system. Okay, and foreigners have equal rights to
Equal rights.
Equal rights. Okay. To anybody that's a Colombian. More importantly to that, with respect to the mining industry, it has a very established mining industry, Colombia. Colombia has got big players there that are operated in country. There's Drummond's in country, South 32's in country, Glencore's in country. Glencore operates the largest open pit coal mine in the world called Cerrejón in Colombia. Zijin Mining is another big mining company that we sold our Buritica asset to. They've been operating in country.
Is it a Chinese company?
That's the Chinese company. So it's got a very well-established mining industry, and it's got a mining code, okay? So the rule of law applies in Colombia just like to any mining company. The tax rate for any mining company is the exact tax rate that Coca-Cola or Pepsi or whoever is going to pay. Yeah. Okay, there's no going to negotiate a one-shot deal with the government. Okay, that you see in Panama and
in some specific countries.
Yes, right. So it's and then the biggest point I want to make is that the permitting timeline in Colombia, in our view, makes it a tier 1 jurisdiction. But if I ever said to you, oh, Colombia is a tier 1 jurisdiction, your knee-jerk reaction would probably say, I don't agree with you. You know, it's Canada, it's the United States, maybe part of Europe. But in those countries, to permit a mine, in the United States, it's nearly 2 decades to permit a mine. Okay, who's got time for that, right? In Canada, it's roughly 6 years now. Okay, in Colombia, by law, at the national level, okay, it's 10 months.
10 months.
You get your answer in 10 months. We permitted Buritica in 9 months.
Okay.
Okay, great. And that is a distinct competitive advantage in our view.
Of course.
Right, because we're in the business of, we invest at the project level. We don't buy equities and trade them, on a short-term basis. When we put our money to work, we're putting big bets on a country that's going to stay stable from a mining perspective for 10 years, which was roughly what it takes to take an asset from exploration to production.
Of course. Did you get some kind of contacts with Camacho, the new minister for mining?
We have good relationships with him, and we're agnostic to whoever's in power. I mean, our focus is on the local government and the local community, and that always translates into good relations with at the national level.
Okay.
The current government, despite its challenges, okay, the current government, the current president of Colombia is not very popular, okay? He's having a lot of challenges, but despite all of that, he has issued 7 mining permits under his administration, 4 open pits and 3 underground mines. Okay, so it's business as usual in Colombia.
Okay. To end this interview, what are your expectations regarding the precious metal markets, especially gold, of course, but maybe also silver, which has been a little late compared to gold? Yeah,
well, I don't worry at all about the midterm or long-term gold price or precious metal price.
Interesting.
I mean, there's 2 factors. Number one is the balance sheets of virtually every government in the world is a disaster.
Yeah.
Right? They've overspent, right? And then they can't stop. It's like an addiction. They can't stop spending.
And they won't stop.
And they won't stop, right? That's the first thing. And the second thing is the weaponization of the US dollar, the currency that happened a couple of years ago when the United States trying to, with their reaction to the Russian-Ukrainian war, and they started weaponizing the currency, and the East are coming up with alternatives to the US dollar. So to me, all those factors combined is a perfect setup for precious metals.
Okay. Well, thank you, Paul, for your time, and look forward to see the success of collective mining.
Thank you. Appreciate it.